Welcome everyone to today's LANSA's webinar on Visual LANSA's latest version, 15 Plus. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. My name is Tony Graham. I am the Product Marketing Manager for LANSA, and I am joined by LANSA's Senior Project Manager and Visual LANSA expert, Edgar Wharton. Edgar, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Okay, so here's going to be our the V15 Plus webinar agenda. And the focus will be on PWAs and V15 Plus. I mean, we're really excited to announce the low-code features for PWAs. Okay, but before we get into the V15 Plus features and progressive web apps, I do want to talk a little bit about Visual LANSA's hybrid low-code approach and do a V15 recap. For anybody that has missed V15, we released V15 last summer. It was a huge release, many new features to enable the professional developer to develop apps much more efficiently. So I'll do a quick recap on V15. We'll get into V15 Plus new features really quick. I'm going to highlight one because at the end, or I should say towards the middle of the webinar, Edgar is going to do an in-depth look at the V15 new features. I'm going to highlight PWAs, and I'll kind of go into PWAs. You know what a progressive web app is, why develop PWAs, the advantage of PWAs, some use cases for customer facing and for non-customer facing, and then I'll hand it over to Edgar for the V15 Plus new features in depth, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers, and then Zoom has a Q&A box. So anytime during this webinar you have a question, type it in there. We should have time to get to questions at the end. Any questions we cannot answer or don't have time to answer live, we will get back to you and answer those questions with follow-ups. So hybrid low code. So the Visual LANSA advantage is what I like to call it. So Visual LANSA focuses on enabling the professional developer to be as efficient as possible. Visual LANSA is very much a professional developer's toolbox, and low code is just one of those tools inside that toolbox. So hybrid low code is going to allow the developer to use low code when it is convenient, and you're going to see that with PWAs. You're going to entirely enable a web application to be a progressive web app entirely through low code through about 3 clicks to do everything, and that's it. And so when it is convenient and when it makes sense to use low code for the developer, that low code technology is there. And then when traditional coding is needed for those more complex applications, for those more complex processes, we're going to allow you to code traditional coding right inside the IDE when it's necessary as well. But that doesn't mean like these are the only things that we offer. Like I said, Visual LANSA is a professional developer's toolbox. So you can import JavaScript and .NET assets. You know, if you have those assets, there's no need to rewrite those assets if they're already created. If you feel more comfortable writing a .NET asset for a specific aspect, you know, we allow you to do that as well. We're not going to hinder you in any way, but we are going to offer our own 4GL language right inside our IDE. So you don't have to go outside the IDE. You don't have to go out and write in .NET. You don't have to go out and write in JavaScript. You can stay right inside our IDE, use our language when it makes sense, use low code when it makes sense. And the other aspect of the hybrid is you're going to be able to create desktop and web applications, same IDE, using many of the same assets, many of the same techniques. So there is quite a bit of advantage for Visual LANSA in the hybrid low code. And you'll see that definitely more as we get into the webinar and as you see how PWAs are created in Visual LANSA. It's really exciting. So just to recap, V15 was released last summer, and it was a huge update to Visual LANSA. So, and we focused on like four aspects, right? Web application development, web services. As always, we want to make the app developer more productive. So we added more features for the app developer to be more productive. And then integrator, we added some features as well for the integrator integration as well. So with web application development, we enhanced and we made enhancements to Scruds. And then we made enhancements to the VLF. Now the VLF is the Visual LANSA framework. And if you're not familiar with the VLF, with the Visual LANSA framework, this is an entire framework, an entire application to house all your other applications in a single framework created with low code. So we are going to take care of the navigation. We're going to take care of your user interfaces, how things are laid out. Now you're still going to have control if you want to customize it. But what we do is make it very easy for you to get started. And think of it like an ERP, right? An ERP, you'll have accounts payable, accounts receivable, maybe general ledger, inventory management. You have all these different tabs inside an ERP. And that's what the VLF is. It's the central location. So you don't have several different individual apps you have to click on. You can house them all in one central area. The user signs in one spot and has access to everything they need that they have permission to in a very convenient format. And again, a lot of that's generated through low code. So you're not worried about creating this framework. You're not worried about creating all these different tabs. You use our wizard and you can get focusing on the actual business value part of the application. And then we export lists to Excel. We added native chart controls, and I'm going to talk about the native chart controls a little bit here in a second. And new material design templates. Design templates are one of the ways low code speeds up app development. You can start with a template and customize it from there, but it gives you a great starting point where you don't have to design all the user interfaces, all the user features. You pick a template, kind of declare what you want to connect to, and you're off and running. And so by offering more templates, we offer greater ways to get you up and running for your new applications. Code generator for publishing web APIs. We've turned APIs into low code, and it's much easier for the users. And I'm going to talk just a little bit more about that before we get into 15 plus. And then on the app developer productivity side, you can load data from Excel. We've improved import and connecting to data. We've enhanced our error logging. We've made Git enhancements. We've better present contents of YAML files and additional data type support. And then, for the integrator part, Visual LANSA is still like the IBMI low-code platform. We are by far the best, like the easiest to use. We offer the most features, especially when it comes to low-code on the I. That's our native integration. We handle the I seamlessly. And so we've improved the code generator to produce free format RPG. We've added security improvements and the HTTP server improvements. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the V15 features before we get into V15 Plus that I think I want to highlight a little bit more for those that are not fully aware of the V15 features. So code generator for publishing web APIs. So you generate server modules with RESTful API code based on tables nominated when creating the server module. So to create this API server module, in a server module that's going to reside in a central repository, access to all the different, different Visual LANSA applications will have access to it. And it's created simply with this wizard. You're going to nominate the tables, click create, and now that server module is ready to be used, right? Then you're going to automatically generate schema and definitions with drag and drop. You're simply going to drag and drop your table and field definitions over into your API. And so this publishing web APIs now becomes low code, becomes very simple. Native chart controls. Before you had to use Google Charts or third-party charts, and you can still use Google Charts. We're not saying you don't have to, but what we've done is made it even easier to create charts by making them primitive. So you can drag and drop these charts, right? It's low code. We have a new dashboard template, so you can see the various charts that we have. You can see how you can get data into them, and so you can really focus on the data and getting the correct data into your chart, and you don't have to worry about coding the different charts and how they're going to look. We'll take care of the chart look, and then you take care of getting the data the proper data. So people, when they see the dashboard, when managers, when users, when C-levels see the data, they see the important data that they're going to, that's relevant to them, that they're going to make their decision on. And it adds that value because it speeds up that application development. Import Excel worksheets. So starting with V15, you can upload Excel worksheets into Visual LANSA to generate tables in our repository. And so what's nice about this is if you want to test out Visual LANSA and don't want to connect to your database, fine. Import Excel worksheets with your data and test it out. The other thing, this is very nice for is if you're experimenting, if you're prototyping an application, maybe that data doesn't exist in your test environment, you don't want to connect to the main environment, you bring that worksheet in, you put it in the central repository, you have access to that data, and now you can prototype exactly how the app's going to integrate with that data, how it's going to react to that data. You can get the end user's feedback, all without even having to mess with connecting to a database. And then version control. Audit management is so important right now. Version control is so important in today's software, development. There's a lot of industries that want the audits, that want to see the changes, that want you to track the changes. And again, for collaboration, it's nice to see the different changes too. Who made the changes? What changes did they make? If something has broke from one version to another, it's nice to be able to bring up the comparison, see highlighted what has changed. And so with our version control, with our YAML comparison tool, it displays the differences in two changes with line numbers, with indentations, and with highlighting. So you're gonna be able to go in and see exactly what changed from version to version, from build to build. And then the new branch action allows users to see all the local and remote branches, to view all commits in the current repository, as well as create, check out, merge, and rebase branches. And then before we get into the new features, the final feature I just want to go over real quick is the Event Log Manager. We now have a central place to go see all your LANSA logs. So this is not just from Visual LANSA. If you have other LANSA products, integrator, they are all going to be in a central location. It's going to be much easier to find. You're not going to have to manually search for them. And you can clear this. New logs will pop in as you're trying to troubleshoot, trying to see, maybe see what's happening at what time, in what order. There's now a centralized place. And so that streamlines troubleshooting, debugging, and how your applications are going to work. Okay, so V15 Plus. So this is the exciting part. And I'm going to go over the one big, huge main feature, and that's the one-click PWA creation. So you're going to be able to easily enable PWA enable web apps developed in Visual LANSA 15 and 14.2, as well as web apps you created in 15 Plus with simply a click of a button. You're going to go to offline support. You're going to click a drop down, and it's going to say web app manifest and service worker, and you click that, and now your web app is a PWA ready, right? And it's that simple to create a progressive web app. And so you've enabled this, right? You've got the service worker, you've got the app manifest, you just clicked a button, you've enabled your web app to be a progressive web app. So now you can drag and drop assets to be cached. So a big part of the progressive web apps is the caching. So assets load in faster, resources load in faster. There's some offline availability into those cached assets. Well, you're just going to drag and drop those. So so far you've cached all your assets. You've enabled this PWA, right? And you have not done a line of code yet. And then you're going to select your caching strategy from a drop-down menu. So if you want cache first, or if you want, network first, and that's also just a drop-down. So you've set up your PWA, you've enabled it, you've added all the components you need without a single line of code in 2, 3, 4 minutes, if that. And so that is really exciting. And where I'm going to get into progressive web apps now. But to highlight that feature right off the bat is really cool, because that is where low code, the hybrid low code really comes into play. Is now that we've set up our progressive web app very easily without creating all the different components, we can get into creating our application, what we really want our application to do. So what are PWAs, right? So they're progressive web apps. And so the idea of a progressive web app, the components have been around for quite a while. And so some of you may be familiar with progressive web apps. Maybe some of you are not. Maybe you've heard of them. But basically, progressive web apps are just web apps, or websites created with some extra components, a service worker and an app manifest, that allow them to be installable, work with little or no network connection, and have access to the device's native feature. And once this app is installed, they don't have a browser bar, and it looks and feels like a native app. So a progressive web app is the best of a website combined with the best of a mobile app. And so here's just a simple app I generated real quick in Visual LANSA, and you can see the orange arrow is pointing to the plus. And if you go to any website that's out there right now, like Grubhub, they have a progressive web app. You'll see this plus. And when you click that plus, it'll ask you to install it. And there's different ways, you're like, well, how do people know how to install it? There's different ways. You can actually put it on that left menu drop-down button. You can create a big button on your web page. But right now, when you see that plus, that is an indicator that this is a progressive web app. And when you simply click that plus and install it, you get basically what looks like, and here's another a packaged web application sample that comes with Visual LANSA. And I just enabled it to be a progressive web app. And you notice the URL is gone. This no longer looks like a website. This now feels and looks like a native application. And it can act like a native application. But what you've done is you've bypassed the App Store. You've bypassed all the different builds. And you've created, and since it's web, using web resources, you've created an application that is going to feel the same across every device. And so, Visual LANSA, like I said, that was a few clicks, and you have created this progressive web app. And when I said it's installable, you get the icon on your desktop. And so this will launch like a native app, look like a native app, feel like a native app, but it is basically a website with a bunch of, or with several components that turn it into this progressive web app. So why PWAs? So is it being on the App Store enough? So here's what, this is common research. You can look this up. Only your most loyal customers are going to use your native app. This is what the major brands are finding out. This is what research is finding out, right? That got to be on the App Store, and there's still validity in that, right? That's just when I talk at the bottom, this omni-channel presence. It's not like the App Store is going away. Whether that makes sense for you to be on the App Store, whether it doesn't, but what we're finding out is your most loyal customers are going to be on the App Store, right? So native apps have less reach than a website. Well, a progressive web app is just a website with some components that make it a web app, and so they have a better reach than a native application. PWAs are also easier to maintain and are more cost-effective to create. You're creating one build, right? One application now covers iOS, now covers Android, it covers PC, it covers Macs, it covers iPads, it covers Android tablets. So you have this one build, and now you no longer have to worry about App Store approval. You don't have to worry about iOS going, does your native application work on the next iOS upgrade? Does this flavor of Android break your current application? Do you need to upgrade it? Now you have to go through the store approval again. So you eliminate all that with the progressive web app. Progressive web apps are also shareable. So through text, email, or direct from a web page. So it's very easy, if you're using them internal, send out an email to the employees that need it. They can click on the link, install the web app on whatever devices they need it on, and they now have their progressive web app. You can, again, like I showed you, you can download it right from a web page, and you can even share it through text, SMS. So they're installable, but much less resource intensive. And then I'll show you some stats here of different PWAs. We're talking kilobytes as opposed to megabits, in which people with modern phones, you think, well, that's not a big deal. But remember, not everybody has the latest and greatest phone. Not every device you buy is going to have the biggest, processor, the best processor, the most memory. There's still a lot of devices that are on the lower cost side, which resources are important because they're only going to keep the most important apps, right? If they have games they love, they're not going to keep your app if they have a game they'd rather have instead. And so using that less resources means they can still have your PWA on their phone along with all their other apps that they use. Google will also be prioritizing PWAs and SEO. So there again, finding it is not going to be an issue. It's going to be much like a website, but it's going to have priority. So, Google's been kind of the push for these progressive web apps. And so it makes sense that they're going to start prioritizing them. And so you're going to be able to be found even easier. And again, that omni-channel presence. It's being everywhere your end user is and making sure that they have a great experience. And whether that experience is native mobile, if that experience is just a faster mobile experience, maybe not necessarily the in-depth of a native app. If you want to supplement that, catch your heavy users, catch your occasional users, but being everywhere that your customer or that your user is going to be is very important. And that's what PWAs really shine, is creating this bridge so you can be everywhere on every device. And PWA advantages, again, maintain one build for all devices. You're going to streamline the user experience. And PWAs can be very focused. Like I said, your best users, your most loyal users, your heavy users are still probably going to use that native app for a while. So the PWA does not have to replicate that native app. It can supplement it. It can be very targeted to the occasional user. It can be, there's wide range of uses for a PWA. And so they can be very focused, but as well as streamlining that user experience and that same experience across all devices, it's web, right? It's web technologies, it's browser-based. So whether you pull it up on an iPhone and then, sit down at your desktop and bring it up, it's the same experience. It's not different because, I just used the app and now I'm on the Windows using its app, or now I'm on a website with a completely different experience. It's that same user experience. It's that user being comfortable that no matter what device they have, no matter where they sit down at, no matter where they're out and about at, they have that same experience. And then ability to run offline. This capability is expanding. We're kind of opening the door to this offline world, and we're going to be expanding on this offline capability throughout the year and in our future releases. And so, this is another place PWAs really shine, is that offline capability, is to be able to run it and have some functionality when you're not connected to the network, and have all that data there then when you come back to the network. So some business use cases, and this is where, if you're looking at it for customer facing, like I said, I'll go over both non-customer facing and customer facing, but these are some, what I felt were some very compelling statistics as far as PWAs go. So Pinterest found out that only 1% of their visitors converted to signups. So people were going to the website, they're saying, hey, go check out our native app, or, they're sending them to the iOS store, or they were finding but only 1% of those visitors were actually installing that application. So when they went to a PWA, they experienced not only a 44% increase in ad revenue, but a 60% increase in user engagement, because people no longer had to install anything. As per se, an app store, you didn't have to go through that app store procedure. You could just simply click that install button and make that experience so much better. You're not putting in information, you're just simply clicking it, downloading it. And now they have an experience very similar to the native, but they don't, you don't have the restrictions of that app store and the restrictions and all the steps of signing up for a mobile app. And when I said the resources are less, so if you look, theirs is 100 kilobyte for their PWA compared to 56 megabyte for their iOS. So Starbucks, Starbucks uses their PWA. You can browse menu and nutrition information and customize their orders with no internet connection. So you might be somewhere where you don't have internet connection, and you can have your Starbucks order ready to go. So when you get connection, you send it. There it is. So what they did, what the Starbucks found out, is they doubled their daily active users. So their PWA didn't replace their native app; it supplemented it. It doubled their daily users. Like they reached customers that they weren't reaching before. And you can see their resource difference is 233 kilobyte to 148 megabit. And so there is some difference there in resources. Forbes. So this is a good example of just a mobile website, a mobile experience. So Forbes needed a faster, better mobile website. They needed a better mobile experience. So what they did was they launched a PWA for their mobile website, for their mobile experience. And they had, they registered 43% more sessions and had a 20% increase in ad viewability and tripled their scroll depth. So by simply changing a mobile website to a progressive web app, that performance increases, and now your user engagement increases because they're having a better experience with this dedicated progressive web app. And Trivago, this is a pretty cool one too. So they increased engagement 150% because they have faster load times. They got the push notifications. And so now customers click on hotel offers twice as much as they did compared to the native app. So what about non-customer facing, right? Okay, that's great if you're building a customer facing app, but what's some uses maybe, right? If you're not creating a customer facing app, and there's a lot, and there's a lot of great potential here. So a field service tech worker with our field service tech with a work order app. Somebody that goes out in the field might not have connectivity all day long. He can get his work orders begin the day. You can push notification, new work orders. He can be completing these work orders while he's offline. He's somewhere where he's not. He reconnects, gets back into somewhere where there's connection. And then, that reconnects, that data is transferred. He gets any push notifications of new. And so this is where, progressive web apps can really shine, are these areas, especially like factories, where you may have parts of the plant that just don't have the best internet connectivity. Instead of using still the paperwork orders, you can use any kind of tablet, right? They could use, if you want to use a Surface, if you want to use an iOS, an iPad or an Android. And so, inventory management. And what's nice, and internal sales. So, sales can download cached, those cache resources for sales numbers. They can be somewhere where they might not have necessarily, on a plane. So you don't have internet connection. You can still be doing some data manipulation. You can still be looking at relevant, important information, and then be able to turn around and re-upload that when you get back to connectivity. And so the big benefits of that is that seamless user experience across all devices. So that maintenance work order, he has his iPad, he goes out to the plant, he does his work orders, he can come back and on a PC, maybe he's got a workstation, and that application is going to look and feel just like that mobile experience one that he had on his iPad. So there's not any of this. So where's that button on this when I'm on my laptop? Where's this at when I'm on this piece, or on this iPad? It's seamless. It's the same across all devices. And so you don't have to worry about, does this department have iPads? Does that department have Android? Maybe sales want Surfaces. Doesn't matter anymore. You're going to build one application, and the end users, the different departments can have different devices to their heart's content. It doesn't matter to you anymore. And so that is the main benefits of the PWAs. So now I'm going to hand this over to Edgar, and he's going to dive into the depth of the V15 Plus. Edgar?
Hello. All right.
Hello there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to have all of you with us today. This is a really fantastic release for us because it's helping us to realize what the long-term goal is here. And our ultimate goal is to really realize a new web and hybrid low code that's focused on extensibility and really bridging the gap between native device functionality and the web. Utilizing technologies that are already in existence. So yeah, let's keep going and let's chat a little bit about what are some of the updates we provided here. So as Tony has already pointed out, our main thing was to be able to provide the ability to create or transition your single page applications into what are deemed as progressive web applications. So within this update, we really wanted to ensure that there was an ease of creating and progressing those single page applications. And we did that through really abstracting the work that's needed to manipulate the service worker. So it's incredibly simple to begin reviewing how a progressive LANSA application fits into your overall strategy. If you aren't really familiar with service workers, we do have a white paper that we put out not too long ago that you can actually retrieve from our website that gives a really great overview of progressive web applications and the various pieces of technologies that are within them. But in general, service workers, they are some powerful little buggers. So essentially, they are a web worker and they enable actions to be completed outside of the main JavaScript thread. So for what most people know, JavaScript is not a multi-threaded language. However, workers allow for a subset of activities to be offset from the main thread. Therefore, you're not blocking the UI. And within service workers, they're capable of moving resources from your cache storage or an IndexedDB database, which is to be announced within the near future. And display those objects as part of your web application. So they're very powerful and they're very useful. However, they can also be very tricky. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to abstract that so that it's really not your responsibility to have to handle that. In general, I like to say this a lot, it provides some really great developer efficiency gains. Additionally, within this release, we have the LANSA routing framework. And within this framework, we've basically built in the capabilities of having client-side routing. And these routes can be generated through the template and view dialogues. And I'll give a little example of that a bit later. But one thing that we also wanted to make sure was, in staying true to what you're capable of and how easily you can build applications and evolve them. We made it so that the routing framework is very much manipulable through RDMLX. So you're able to work on the various transitions that you may have. You're able to declare what is supposed to happen when you need to switch out one component for another and so forth. So we really wanted to make the routing framework as flexible as possible, but also provide the low code advantages of being able to set up routes through what we have as the details tab, or being able to create views that already have routes enabled within them. So all you have to do is essentially continuously add and build out your views. Can I get the next slide? So within the IDE, which is your main development environment that you really never have to leave, we made it so that the outline view, which many of you have probably come across and view as a really amazing feature. I know I love it because it helps to give a sense of the layers and the hierarchy of your web application. So within that outline view, you'll be able to see your various apps, your various routes and the routers that they're attributed to, as well as you'll be able to get a better sense of that hierarchy and exactly where different paths are actually leading within the application. Another part of this release is the instantiation of a router. So as I said before, you can create a new view, and you can actually create that new view with routing already in tow. Beyond that, we have the user-defined cache and the ability to actually create the service worker and the web application manifest so that you can have your progressive web apps. The user-defined cache is a really unique one. It plays off of what we had of the application cache. And so you're able to easily either right-click through the context menu or click the add button at the top, and you're able to nominate resources that you can drag and drop into that cache storage space. Also being able to declare what the name of the cache storage should be. Can I get the next slide, please? So I wanted to just give a little bit of a preview of, what you can do within a particular route. And I do want to say and let you all know that there is a blog post that will be coming out that has more technical details involved with how to create routes, manipulate routes, and really what is this whole world of client-side routing. But within the IDE itself, especially if you are very new to programming within RDMLX or programming in general, you can begin to set up the routes within the details. So after you instantiate a route through one of the new classes or through the views with routing, then you're able to determine, okay, does this route have a parent, which helps you to build a tree of child routes that are connected to that parent route. You're able to determine and say whether there should be a redirect if someone goes to this particular part of your web application, or if this particular route is protected and they must be authenticated, or they need to be redirected to a sign-in page in order to view that information. Can I get the next slide, please? So like Tony was saying, it is very simple for you to enable your application for installability on desktop and mobile devices. It's essentially going to be, you can open one of your current applications to test this out, maybe make a copy of it first and then test it out by opening the current application, or you can generate an application through through the wizard or use one of our templates. From there, you are navigating to what is the offline support tab, and then you're essentially just selecting web app manifest / service worker. And from there, you're basically going to compile, and that's going to set the motion of providing you with the service worker and providing you with the application manifest that will tell the most modern browsers, especially Google Chrome, Safari to an extent, but I find that Safari is a bit limited in its capabilities. And it's going to tell the browser that this is a progressive web application and this means that it is installable. So go to the next slide for me, please. So yeah, essentially, just like I said, if you are just starting out, maybe you are running the free trial of Visual LANSA, or you are already a LANSA user and you're very curious about this, and you already have access to version 15 and the EPC, then you can essentially just click on build a mobile web application, run through that template very quickly, and start to see exactly the workflow of putting together the progressive web application, or as I like to call it, a progressive LANSA application. And from there, you're able to kind of sit down and determine what your strategy can be when using progressive web applications. Perhaps one of the things that you have mostly been doing is focusing on native application development or even using LANSA mobile. So with this allows you the chance to look at the web application that you have and figure out if there are some things that would be missing if you're using a progressive web application. One of the things that I do want to point out is that, throughout this upcoming year, throughout this year, we are going to be providing a lot of additional functionality within this new web application framework. And so one of the things outside of having the cache storage is that we are going to be in the very near future providing the use of what is known as IndexedDB. And that is a database that lives inside of the browser. And basically we can build it so that you will be able to have movement of data from the repository to the browser for storage. Our ultimate goal with a lot of this is to ensure that we can cover those use cases where you may have a team of field workers and they need access to certain files and so forth, and certain information that if they lose internet connectivity, they wouldn't necessarily have. And so we want to, as a good example, actually, I know some of you may look this up, or I can send out a link as well. There was a really amazing research paper that was put together about using GeoJSON. And basically that's being able to house a spatial database that has millions of points of data for GIS systems, and being able to use that information within a web application using IndexedDB within remote locations. And so for us, that is one of the pinnacles that we want to be able to reach, because if you reach that pinnacle, then you're able to handle the vast majority of situations that people run into. But moving forward, yeah, so you're essentially going to be able to drag and drop any resources that you would like to have within your cache storage. The reason that you want to use the service worker, that you want to utilize the cache storage, is because the service worker will essentially intercept network requests that are made, and it will check the cache storage for whether the items are present within that particular storage area or not. So if the item is available within the cache storage, rather than completing that network request back to your server, the service worker will route the item to the presentation layer without having to deal with the network at all. So essentially you gain performance. There are definitely big performance gains from being able to do that. And also you're ensuring that the information that your customers or that your employees need are available right there for you. Next slide, please. So just to dive a little bit into creating the cache. So you're going to be on the offline support page. Then you're going to either right-click that context menu. You're going to add a service worker cache. As you can see in this slide, there are two areas that are grayed out. Those are areas in which we're going to be adding some additional functionality that is going to allow for more manipulation of those resources that you want your service worker to control. And so you're essentially going to drag and drop any resources that you need. So for example, if you have a high number of images, you can ensure that those images are cached and ready to be presented. That way, you have very large media files, things of that nature. You're going to have much quicker response for when any of your end users actually click or navigate to an area that utilizes those resources. Right now, your LANSA runtime, it is going to be cached automatically. So you will at least have the application shell there, especially within those situations that you do lose internet connectivity. Not everything is going to disappear with a 404 not found page or offline. So like I said, you drag and drop, then you save and compile. And once you open up the browser view, you'll be able to navigate through the web application. You'll be able to look into the developer tools, and you'll be able to see exactly your various parts of cache storage. Can I get the next slide, please? And so when you do open up your browser and execute your application, you'll see a little plus symbol that will be in the URL. And that comes standard across browsers. One thing that we are going to be working on providing is more controls that will allow you to, maybe you do not want to show that the application is installable right at the forefront. Perhaps there's a certain area within your application that a customer may click on, and then you want them to know that it is installable. But as of right now, if you click on the little plus symbol that will be in the browser, then a modal will pop up and it'll ask you whether you want to install that application. And when you install that application, that removes the need for a URL bar, and you have a fully functional application that you're able to use. Now, at current, I do want to say that you are able to place views, dialogues, any of your resources, whether they be JavaScript that you have brought in yourself, images, videos, and you're also able to place your reusable parts within the cache storage as well. And this is only going to get better. Some of the things that we are looking at, and we've talked to, I'm looking at this list, I've talked to some of you, and some of the things that we are looking at is definitely pushing forward the offline capabilities by providing the ease of manipulation of the index database. We're also looking at how we can bring in more media controls so that your web applications have access to native device functions, you know, such as with the camera, or being able to understand shapes and detect barcodes and so forth. So all of these things, you know, combined make it so that your web applications begin to really feel and look no different than a native application. And thus that's going to decrease the time as well as decrease the amount of work that you have to do in supporting various platforms. Tony, I'm gonna take control just for a second. I just want to, you know, give a quick preview.
Okay.
All right. So, there we go.
Let me stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I have a very wide screen, so I hope everyone can see this. So right now I am in the LANSA editor. And as I said before, you can easily go to build a mobile application and you'll be able to select from any of the templates, and you can begin the process of, you know, just experimenting and seeing exactly why you would want to use the progressive web applications. Right now, I am actually using a template called the Task Manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through exactly those steps that I outlined in the beginning. So here we are in my design view, and up here, we have the offline support tab. So if I go to the offline support tab, typically if this application is just now being generated, it will state none. But if you want the PWA option, then you are going to state that you want a web app manifest or a service worker. You can also just have a service worker. If you do not want your application installable, we provide the option of just being able to add in resources to the cache storage and so forth, so that you do have those things available within those low to no network connectivity areas. So once I select web app manifest, service worker, then basically I'm able to add in a cache. So if I right click, I can go ahead, I'm gonna add a service worker cache, and let's just name this test, another test. And you'll see here that we have an area that says strategy. Right now, the strategies that we support are cache first, network first, and network only. So the differences between these. So cache first is really going to be the default that a lot of people are going to want to use because it does not block the network at all. Basically, if you select cache first as a strategy, what is going to happen is the service worker, like I said in the beginning, it's going to check the cache first to see if that item is available. If that item is available, it is going to serve it up from the cache. If that item is not available, then it's going to default back to the network. And the cool thing about what happens is that it's going to let the network request go through. Your server is going to respond with the objects that you need, And the service worker is going to clone that and then place that into the cache automatically for you. So that anytime in the future, if it's an object that you don't mind coming from the cache, then great. It's going to be there and your end users are going to be happy that they have access to it, and you're going to find some speed improvement from that. Network first basically means that whenever this item is requested, it's always going to come from the network. And one of the reasons that you may want to use the network first and network only are for items that are constantly changing all the time. And so that will allow you to have the freshest possible data to present to your end users. As I said, later on, we are going to be providing some ways to utilize that IndexedDB object database. And so that's going to vastly increase the amount of data that can be stored within the browser. And that is also going to allow for us to play around with some new functions such as background synchronization and periodic background synchronization. Periodic background synchronization will be of the most import when we complete the work on that later on within this year. And that's going to essentially allow your application to do a refresh on the data that you nominate that you find is consistently changing to ensure that customers do always have the most important and most relevant new information, especially if they do go into areas where they have low to no network connectivity. So once you select one of the cache options, then you're able to go ahead and drag and drop some resources. As I said, currently you're able to do views, dialogues, reusable parts, and some of the other resources that you may have nominated. So I'm just going to just drag in a couple random views into this. Then I'm going to save it. And go ahead and we're going to compile that. Now I'm only showing all of these various steps. However, I already have in the background this application up and running. And so I'm just going to minimize that and I'm gonna bring up our new application. So this is what you will be greeted with. And as I said before, there's a beautiful plus symbol up here that allows you to install that. So if I click this, I'm going to receive that modal. And just so you know, the icon does not, LANSA is the default for the icon. You are able to bring in your own icons and you're able to use those however you please for your customers to actually recognize your own branding. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to install this. And install it on my other page. But once I installed it, as you see, I no longer have the address bar, and we are looking at additional ways to lock down some of the possibilities of people being able to even attempt to you know, inspect or things of that nature. But even right now, if you click this, you don't, like if I'm an end user, I don't have access to the developer tools. So I'm not able to view any of the source information and things of that nature, which is definitely good for your security purposes. You also have the ability to just uninstall from this bar as well. And if you're using Chrome or Edge, you'll be able to see some of your extensions. So I've installed this. I'm going to go ahead and continue as guest. And there we go. So now I have my fully functional application up and ready to go, and it's connected to my desktop. If I exit out of this, I can just go back to that icon and pull that up again. So I really do think that this is going to be a very useful way for us to move beyond thinking only in terms of iOS and Android. As we continue to build out the various solutions for a progressive LANSA application, we're going to see that gap start to narrow. And we'll get to a point where is there truly a full reason that we have to have or deploy native mobile applications? And in some regards, it's useful for your companies and your organizations to have both of them. But for some people, if they are trying to minimize things that they need to manage on a daily basis and minimize the infrastructure that they have, then this is going to be a very viable solution. Yeah, so it's really fun. There's definitely some great improvements that you're able to see. I'm going to go ahead and open this back up in Microsoft Edge. And I do want to just show you all in the developer tools some of the key points. So what you're going to find here is that we have a service worker. Even though I just launched this, I'm going to go ahead and update that, and it's going to install and it's going to run. And then if I come here, then I have, this is not what you will definitely see when it comes to your cache storage. I've been doing a lot of fooling around with various pieces of code and deploying different applications. But essentially, I am going to only have the runtime, my application files, static assets, and then any of the cache storage that I have declared, such as in this example, I declared images for the static cache storage. Typically, like I said, all you're going to have is the runtime, application, third-party static asset, and whatever else that you decide and you define as the user to be cacheable. And this is going to be very useful, especially for customers that are utilizing the application cache at the current moment. So just remember, those are two separate things between the application cache and what I'm talking about as the service worker cache. At some point this year, application cache will be deprecated, and it will no longer be a part of the standard for Chrome, Edge, and I believe also Safari. Well, all browsers across the board will be removing access to the application cache. So it does behoove you to begin to move towards this service worker idea, because it vastly improves the performance and connectivity of your application. So yeah, I just wanted to give that little short demo of what an installable application actually looks like and what you can expect. And this is a very simple installable one. We are going to be providing some additional templates as time goes on. And one very special project that I'm looking forward to is actually creating a miniature documentation site just for progressive web applications that will itself be a progressive web application. We want to use that as our playground of sorts to introduce new functionality and new experiments that we see fit within the future months. There we go.
Very cool. Thank you, Edgar.
Yeah, no problem.
Some exciting stuff with the progressive web apps. All right, so being cognizant of everybody's time, doesn't really look like there's any 15+ or PWA specific questions. And we are getting towards that hour time. So any outstanding questions, we will get back with you. But we do appreciate very much everybody for attending this webinar. V15+ is very exciting. It's taking progressive web apps to low code and really utilizing low code to create those progressive web apps. And so again, thank you, everybody. Please check out the Visual LANSA website. You can sign up for a free trial and test out V15+. And check out all these new different features. Again, thank you very much for everybody attending, and we look forward to some more webinars. Thank you very much. Bye.